Before laws came steel, before kings came fear, this is not a world of justice. Here walks Conan. The stench hit him first. Before sight or sound, a miasma of decay so thick it coated the back of his throat like oil. Conan stood at the entrance to what had once been a temple, now little more than a gaping wound in the earth, where the city of shadows had collapsed into its own foundations centuries past. The sun hung low and bloated on the horizon, casting the ruins in shades of blood and copper, but the hole before him drank that light and gave nothing back. Absolute darkness waited below, patient as stone, older than the empires that had risen and fallen in the lands above. He had come to this forsaken place tracking a caravan that had vanished 3 days prior, swallowed by the desert as if it had never existed. The merchants who had hired him spoke in whispers of the city of shadows, of the wealth that supposedly lay in its catacombs, of the foolish treasure hunters who descended into those depths and never returned. They offered gold, more gold than a mercenary of his years should command, and that alone told Conan they expected him to die. He took their coin anyway. Death was always a possibility, and fear of it had never stopped him from doing anything. The Cimmerian checked his weapons with the methodical precision of a man who understood that carelessness killed faster than any blade. His sword rested easy in its sheath, the leather worn smooth from countless draws. A dirk hung at his belt, its edge sharp enough to open flesh with the slightest pressure. He carried no torch, for fire announced your presence to anything lurking in the dark, and he had learned long ago that his other senses served him better than sight when the shadows grew deep enough. He descended into the throat of the ruin, his boots finding purchase on steps carved by hands that had turned to dust before his ancestors learned to work iron. The temperature dropped with each footfall, the desert heat above giving way to a cold that had nothing to do with the absence of sun. This was the chill of the tomb, of places where the living were never meant to tread, where the very air had forgotten the warmth of breath and blood. The stairs ended in a corridor so narrow his shoulders nearly brushed both walls. The stone was smooth, worn by the passage of countless feet over uncounted years, and in that smoothness lay a terrible intimacy. How many had walked this path before him? How many had walked it and never walked anywhere again? The silence pressed against his ears like physical weight, broken only by the whisper of his own breathing and the faint scuff of leather on stone. Conan moved forward, one hand trailing along the wall, feeling the subtle variations in the rock. His fingers found carvings, symbols that meant nothing to him, but which seemed to writhe beneath his touch, as if the stone itself were alive. He ignored the sensation, filed it away as information that might prove useful or might prove meaningless. The corridor branched, then branched again, a maze designed by minds that had valued confusion over convenience. He chose his path by instinct, that animal sense that had kept him alive through a dozen campaigns and 100 fights. The darkness was complete now, so absolute that he could not see his own hand before his face, but he did not slow. To hesitate was to invite doubt, and doubt was a cancer that ate at a man's will until he became paralyzed, easy prey for whatever dwelt in the depths. The first body appeared without warning, a shape his questing hand encountered where empty air should have been. Conan froze, every muscle tensed, his free hand dropping to his sword hilt. The corpse was fresh, perhaps a day old, the flesh still yielding beneath his fingers. Male, tall, well-fed, judging by the softness of the belly. One of the merchants from the caravan, then. The throat had been opened, a clean cut that had severed the great veins and left the man to bleed out in the dark. No drag marks. The merchant had died where he stood, which meant whatever killed him had struck from the front, close enough to feel the breath on his face. And the man had not run, had not fought if the lack of defensive wounds told true. He had simply stood and died, as if death were expected, welcomed even. Conan left the corpse and continued deeper, his senses screaming warnings that his conscious mind struggled to interpret. The air tasted wrong, thick with something that was not quite scent and not quite flavor, but existed in the space between. The walls seemed to pulse with a rhythm that matched no heartbeat he had ever felt. The temperature continued to drop until his breath misted before his face, visible even in the absolute darkness as pale vapor that dissipated too slowly. More bodies littered the passages, their placement forming a trail that led inexorably downward. Guards with swords still in their sheaths, servants whose hands clutched at nothing. All bore the same wound, the opened throat, the bloodless flesh. Whatever had killed them had done so with surgical precision, no wasted motion, no excess violence. This was not the work of beasts or bandits, but something else, something that killed with purpose and method. The corridor opened into a chamber vast enough that his footsteps echoed back from walls he could not see. Conan stood at the threshold, every instinct howling at him to retreat, to flee this place and never return. He ignored those warnings the way he ignored pain or fear, or any other distraction from the task at hand. The merchants had paid him to find their caravan. He would find it, or he would die trying. These were the only outcomes that mattered. He sensed movement in the darkness ahead, not seen but felt as a disturbance in the air, a presence that displaced space without sound or scent. Conan drew his sword in a smooth motion, the steel whispering free of the scabbard, and settled into a fighting stance that had become as natural as breathing. His eyes were useless here, but his ears tracked the movement. His skin felt the faint breeze of something passing close. The attack came from above, a descending weight that would have crushed his skull if he had remained stationary. Conan threw himself sideways, rolled, came up with his blade extended. Steel met something that was neither flesh nor metal, but somehow both, a substance that resisted the edge before parting with a sound like tearing silk. No cry of pain followed, no grunt of effort or curse of rage. Only silence and the continued sense of presence circling in the dark. He understood then with the clarity of revelation. This thing, whatever it was, did not hunt by sight any more than he did. It sensed him through other means, heat perhaps, or the sound of his heart, or some alien perception beyond human comprehension. And it was playing with him, testing him, learning his patterns before it struck to kill. Conan stilled his breathing, slowed his heart through an effort of will that few men possessed. He became a statue, a piece of the darkness no different from the stone around him. And he waited, patience honed through years of hunting in Cimmerian forests, where motion meant death and stillness meant survival. The presence circled closer, drawn by curiosity or hunger or simple instinct. Conan felt it approach, felt the displacement of air as it moved within striking distance. He erupted into motion, his sword sweeping in a horizontal arc calculated to intersect with the space where the thing had to be. The blade connected with solid resistance, sheared through it, and something fell to the stone floor with a wet thud. Silence rushed back in, oppressive and complete. Conan remained frozen, blade extended, waiting for the next attack. It did not come. Whatever he had killed, if killed was even the right word, it had died, alone. No pack rushed to avenge it, no swarm descended from the darkness, just the silence and the cold and the gradual understanding that he was not the hunter here, but the intruder. He found the rest of the caravan in the center of the chamber, their bodies arranged in a circle around an altar of black stone that seemed to absorb what little ambient light filtered down from above. They had not been killed. They had been placed there, positioned with care. Their throats opened in what might have been ritual or might have been simple efficiency. The blood had pooled around the altar's base, soaked into channels carved in the floor, channels that formed patterns too complex to be coincidence. Conan studied the scene with cold detachment, cataloguing details that might prove relevant. The altar bore no markings, no script or symbols, but its surface was warm to the touch despite the frigid air. The bodies showed no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, no indication they had fought their deaths. And beneath it all, so faint he might have imagined it, came a sound like breathing, slow and rhythmic, rising from somewhere deeper still. He made his decision in the space between heartbeats. The caravan was lost, the merchants dead. Whatever haunted these depths was beyond his ability to kill or comprehend. To linger was to invite the same fate that had claimed the others. Conan turned and began the long climb back to the surface, moving with deliberate speed, not running but not delaying. The darkness seemed reluctant to release him, clinging to his shoulders like a physical weight, but he pushed through it with the same grim determination that had carried him through every trial his short life had offered. The stairs appeared beneath his feet, the corridor narrowed around him, and finally, impossibly, he saw light bleeding down from the entrance above. He emerged into a desert sunset that felt like rebirth, the heat washing over him in waves that drove the tomb chill from his bones. Behind him, the entrance to the City of Shadows gaped like a mouth waiting to swallow the unwary. Conan did not look back. Whatever dwelt in those depths would continue to dwell there, feeding on the foolish and the greedy, patient as only the truly ancient could be patient. He would return to the merchants who had hired him and tell them their caravan was lost. He would not tell them how it was lost, or what he had found in the darkness, or what had found him. They would not believe him, and belief did not matter. Only survival mattered, and he had survived when better men had not. The Cimmerian walked into the desert as the sun touched the horizon, his shadow stretching behind him like a dark twin. He carried with him the knowledge that there were things in the world older and more terrible than swords could kill, that civilization's ruins held horrors that made the wilderness seem tame by comparison. And he carried too the understanding that he had been permitted to leave, that whatever intelligence had dwelt in that darkness had chosen to let him go. That choice would haunt him in the nights to come, in the space between sleep and waking, when memory became more vivid than reality. But for now he walked, putting distance between himself and the City of Shadows, knowing that some treasures were not worth the price of claiming them, and some mysteries were better left unsolved. Other chronicles await in the shadows, tales of blood and steel, and the thin line between survival and oblivion. The Hyborian Age holds secrets that civilized men dare not acknowledge, truths that only barbarians are strong enough to face. If you have the stomach for such truths, stay. The night is long and the stories are many.